At 17, I had a crush on someone. My family was poor, so I saved money for a whole year to buy him a birthday gift. The day my mom had an accident, I left school early. Just then, I heard him say to his friend with a smile, "This thing, even the third prize in a restaurant would be better than this." His friend laughed loudly and said, "I know Ranga doesn't think much of it, otherwise, give it to me. I can sell it and use the money to surf the internet a few times, if you want it." "Here you go." Ciaran threw it to him in disgust, and his eyes happened to meet mine. Later, at the class reunion, I heard that Ciaran had been looking for me for 8 years. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. When my eyes met Ciaran's, his expression froze slightly. The male classmate holding the watch scratched his head awkwardly and then said, Would you like me to give it back to you?" I looked at the watch in his hand, which was in a mess, clearly not cherished. This watch wasn't very expensive, about 1,000 yuan, but I had saved for nearly a year. I saved it bit by bit from my meal money. My eyes fell on Ciaran's hand. He was wearing a watch today. I couldn't recognize the brand, but I was sure that the watch on his hand was much better than the one I gave him. I silently took the watch from Ciaran's friend, looked at Ciaran, and said slowly, "Sorry. I'll handle it myself." Ciaran lowered his eyes, pressed his lips together, and remained silent, embarrassed. I rubbed the watch in my hand and turned to leave. When I passed the first trash can at the school gate, I made up my mind and threw the watch into the trash can. I turned my head and took a look at him. He casually lifted his eyelids, with a smile on his lips and full of mockery in his eyes. I was stunned and lowered my eyes. It was so embarrassing. My unrequited love, at that time. I didn't know that this look from Ciaran would almost become my nightmare. When I got home, my dad was sitting at the door, with a cheap cigarette in his mouth and a worried look on his face. My mom wasn't there. He handed me a report, which said that my mom had breast cancer. My dad took a deep drag on the cigarette and said, "The treatment for breast cancer will cost over 100,000 yuan. Your mom and I discussed it. We won't treat it. Your mom said she wants to eat the braised pork ribs I make. Go buy the ingredients. I'll go pick up your mom later." I didn't believe it. I kept flipping through the report and said in a trembling voice, "Is it confirmed? There are often misdiagnoses in this kind of thing. I'll take mom to the hospital again tomorrow. This must be a misdiagnosis." I stubbornly looked at my dad. My dad's eyes were blood red. He just looked at me without saying a word at that moment. My tears started flowing and I couldn't stop them. Finally, I cried and said, "I won't go to school anymore. Let's treat mom's illness." My dad lowered his head. I knew that my dad was no less sad than I was. My dad had a disabled right leg. At that time, only my mom was willing to be with him, not dislike him, and always encouraged him. Although our family was poor, my dad and mom loved each other deeply. In junior high school, classmates in my class started to have their own beliefs. I asked my dad, "Dad, what's your belief?" My dad didn't know what belief was, so I explained it to him roughly. He scratched his head shyly and said, "My belief is your mom." Later, I also had my belief. I wanted to grow up, make money, and take my dad and mom to see the world. Now my dad's belief had collapsed, so had mine. I held my dad's hand and said to myself, "I won't study anymore. I'll go to work. We'll go to Beijing to treat mom's illness." My dad smoked and didn't say anything. But I had already made up my mind. I asked my dad to pick up my mom, then pack our things and go to Beijing. I myself went back to school. Halfway there, it started to rain. Pedestrians on the road were in a hurry, trying to avoid getting caught in the heavy rain. Only then did I dare to cry. The rain mixed with my tears. When I got to school, there were hardly any people left. I reached up my hand towards the dirty trash can. The stinky and pungent smell kept coming up. I rummaged through it several times, but the watch I threw away wasn't there. I bit my lip, wishing I could slap myself for throwing the watch away. I could have sold it for a few hundred yuan. I searched for hours, going through every piece of trash in the trash can, but there was no sign of the watch. I walked home in a daze. By then, there was almost no one on the street. The rain was heavy and it hurt a bit when it hit my body. When I got home, my dad still wasn't back. The once warm home now just felt cold to me. I waited and waited. Finally, a person came in a hurry and told me, "Your dad and mom jumped into the river." That year, I was in my senior year of high school. I lost both my parents and became an orphan. 8 years have passed, and I still can't forget what happened that day. I sat up in bed, turned on my phone, and found that it was only 4 o'clock. I softly and miserably called out to the empty room, "Dad, Mom," as usual. There was no response. I lowered my head. In the past 8 years, they never came to see me even once. In my dreams, there was only Ciaran with a smile on his lips, his eyes full of mockery, asking me, "Do you have any self-respect, Suji?" Every time I shouted that I had self-respect, the dream would end. I couldn't fall asleep anymore, so I might as well get up and pack my things. After numbly holding the funerals for my parents that year, I left that place. I went to a new city, working while studying. It was really tough to study and work at the same time, but I didn't dare to stop. Once I stopped, I wanted to cry. I went to the hospital. The doctor said I had moderate depression and needed someone to help me get over that day, but there was no such person. After leaving for 8 years, in recent years, I increasingly wanted to go back, to see the river where my parents jumped. I wanted to jump in and ask why they were so cruel. I was really tired. Anyway, I was going back. I didn't reject the idea of seeing those classmates from my old class anymore, so when the class monitor asked if I would go to the class reunion, I was the first to say yes. I hadn't spoken in the class group for 8 years. I had also deleted all my classmates' contacts, including Ciaran. I bought a ticket for the earliest high-speed train. I felt very relaxed. In the past 8 years, I had never felt more relaxed than at this moment. I enjoyed the beautiful scenery outside the window and chatted with the young couple sitting next to me with a smile. The girl said, "Sister, you don't know. It was so hard for me to chase him at that time. There were so many girls chasing him, but I persisted for 2 years. Now I'm taking him to meet my parents." Sister, you seem so happy. Are you also going home? I think the wind on the way to see parents is sweet. I was silent for a moment, then forced a smile and said, "Yes, I'm also going home, to see my parents." I said the last part in a very low voice, so low that only I could hear it, but this sentence made me happy. I would see my parents soon. I hummed all the way. After getting off the high-speed train, I went straight to the place the class monitor had booked. When I arrived, most of the people were already there. As soon as I entered, the room fell silent. I sat down by myself at the place closest to the door. I put away the smile on my face. The class monitor pushed his glasses and broke the silence. "Suji, you're here." I nodded. "Joyu, a girl who had always been at odds with me before, said in a sarcastic tone, "Oh, if it isn't the most difficult to invite top students, Suji. Looking at your face makes me lose my appetite. Can someone remind Ciaran not to come today?" No one knew the reason why I dropped out of school back then, but they all knew that I liked Ciaran and that I gave him a gift. The girl sitting next to Joyu tugged at her. The class monitor also frowned and said, "Cut it out. Ciaran has been looking for Suji for 8 years. Telling him she's here will only make him happy." Joyu sneered and said, "Ciaran is kind-hearted. Who knew he would feel the need to apologize for not liking someone? Looking for her for 8 years is just to apologize to Suji. Is there anything wrong with not liking someone? Everyone knows that Suji transferred schools because Ciaran embarrassed her. What you said makes it seem like Ciaran likes her. Doesn't Ciaran have someone he likes? I heard that person is a rich and beautiful girl, besides being good looking. What does Suji have to be worthy of his attention? A disabled father, a poverty-stricken home. Come on." The more Joey talked, the more excessive she became, and everyone else frowned. I stood up. Without showing any anger, I said, "I'm not here to eat, so you don't have to worry about losing your appetite. I just came to see everyone. Now that I have, I'll leave." After saying this, I opened the door and walked out. The class monitor chased after me. He grabbed my hand and said seriously, Ciaran really has been looking for you for 8 years. Won't you wait for him? Ciaran's appearance appeared in my mind. He was very handsome, with beautiful eyes, but when he looked at me, there was no emotion in his eyes, and there was a mocking smile on his lips. I shook my head and said with a smile, "I'm in a hurry. If you see him, please say sorry to him for me. I'm really very sorry." The class monitor froze in place after leaving. I bought a lot of joss paper. I burned a large amount of it in front of my parents' graves, so much that it would be enough for 100 years. After burning the paper, I went back home to take a look. Everywhere in the house was covered with dust. I didn't clean it, nor did I touch anything in the house. I stayed at the door for a long time. By then, it was completely dark. There were no lights in the countryside. I turned on my phone and saw that it was almost 11 o'clock. I took a taxi to Xinjiang at night. Xinjiang was very calm. Occasionally, a few motorcycles passed by on the street. All of them were delivery riders. I pulled my suitcase and stopped by the bridge. No one paid attention to me because I was pulling a suitcase. They all thought I was tired from walking and was taking a break by the bridge. I waited until 12 o'clock. No one passed by anymore. I wrote a note and put it on the suitcase. Then I resolutely climbed over the railing and jumped down. The moment I jumped, I wondered if I had heard wrong, but I seemed to hear Ciaran's voice. "Damn it, don't jump, Suji." When I lost consciousness, I seemed to see Ciaran wearing a high school uniform again, leaning against the railing of the corridor light. His coat was loosely draped over his body, a lollipop in his mouth, his brows slightly raised, and a smile in his eyes as he said, "Yo, if it isn't the study committee member." In my first year of high school, I had heard of Ciaran. The girls in the class would discuss Ciaran every day because Ciaran was really handsome. He was fair-skinned, with well-defined facial features, long eyebrows. When he smiled, he had a somewhat alluring charm, unruly and flamboyant. When we were regrouped in the second year of high school, Ciaran and I were in the same class. He sat behind me. During breaks, there were always a bunch of people around my seat, chatting noisily. I wasn't used to having so many people around me, so I would take a full cup of water and pretend to go get water. In fact, I would hide by the back door. Then, I heard them talking about me. What's the homeroom teacher thinking? He knows our Ranga likes beautiful girls, and yet the only girl around him is the study committee member. The homeroom teacher is too harsh. Everyone knows how many pretty girls Ranga dated in the first year of high school. Now it's not that he's not allowed to contact girls. There's the study committee member. After all, to be honest, Rango, I've never seen someone as rustic as the study committee member, who still wears small framed glasses these days. Her bangs are thick and long, and she wears the school uniform so neatly, she looks just like an old pedant. Rango, you won't have any thoughts about her, right? After the sentence, there was a burst of laughter. Fuck off. This was what Ciaran said. His voice was hoarse from puberty. But it was very nice. Then, he sneered and said softly, "Do I, Ciaran, have such low standards?" I was slightly stunned. I looked at my whitened shoes and school pants, and suddenly felt a bit embarrassed. I lowered my head and didn't return to my seat until they ended the conversation. During breaks, my seat never really belonged to me. There were always girls coming to find Ciaran. Ciaran always accepted them all. Later, the school added a swimming class. The swimming suits were to be ordered, and each set cost 180 yuan before class ended. The teacher told me, "The study committee member will collect this money." Zhou smiled softly, raised her hand, and asked, "Teacher, everyone knows that Suji's family is poor. Isn't it inappropriate to give this money to Suji?" I clenched my hands tightly. Zhou had been at odds with me since the first year of high school. I didn't expect that we would be in the same class again in the second year. It wasn't that I had a big feud with Zhou, she just disliked me. Adhering to the principle of the less trouble, the better, I was just about to tell the teacher to forget it. At this moment, a pair of beautiful hands with distinct knuckles suddenly stretched out in front of me. "Here you are, study committee member." I looked up. Ciaran was looking down at me, and his eyes were extremely beautiful. I was a bit stunned for a moment. Maybe I was stunned for too long. The person next to CRN nudged him and said flirtatiously, "Come on, another one is smitten." Hearing this, I came back to my senses, but CRN suddenly bent down and got closer to me. My pupils dilated. He smiled roguishly and whispered in my ear, "I know I'm handsome, but study committee member, you're not my type." I lowered my eyes, took the money from his hand, turned to look at him, nodded, and said softly, "I know." CRN was stunned, raised his brows, and said, "Good, study hard, study committee member." After that, CRN straightened up, tossed the basketball, and left the classroom. The other classmates in the class didn't hear what CRN and I said. They just thought CRN seemed to be nice to me, so they all gave me the money. Joyu reluctantly gave me the money and warned me, "Stay away from CRN, look at your family background. You're like a toad trying to eat swan meat." I ignored her, silently collected all the money, and then took out my living expenses to pay for the swimming suit. After counting, when I was sure the money was enough, I immediately gave it to the teacher, just after school at noon. By the time I handed in the money, they had almost finished eating. I took out a steamed bun from my bag and started eating it in the empty classroom. My mind was full of thoughts about how to find a part-time job to earn living expenses. If I asked my parents for this money, they would definitely give it to me, but I didn't want to. Halfway through eating, CRN came in. He was a bit surprised to see me. I just took a glance and then lowered my eyes, continuing to eat the steamed bun in silence. CRN walked straight to his seat. Suddenly, he poked me and said in a hoarse voice, "Have you finished eating, study committee member?" I looked at the 2-bite left steamed bun, stuffed it into my mouth in one go, then turned my head and nodded silently. He turned sideways and lifted up his school uniform. There was a large abrasion on his waist, still oozing blood. He tilted his head and smiled at me. "Can you help me apply some medicine?" I quickly chewed the steamed bun in my mouth, nodded, and said softly, "Okay." I walked over and squatted beside him, rummaging through my pocket for the medicine, and frowned, asking, "Why didn't you buy iodine? Alcohol will hurt a lot." CRN chuckled softly. "A real man is never afraid of pain." As soon as CRN finished speaking, I dipped a cotton ball in alcohol and wiped his wound. I looked up at CRN and asked, "A real man?" CRN looked down at me, stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "Study committee member, your eyelashes are so long." His tone was extremely casual. I knew CRN was just saying it casually. I lowered my eyes, but my hands pressed harder. CRN didn't make a sound, but his abdominal muscles were as hard as a board, which was enough to show that he was in great pain. Finally, unable to bear it, CRN gritted his teeth and said, "It really hurts. Take it easy." My hand paused, and I subconsciously blew gently on the wound. After blowing, I was stunned, and so was CRN. Then neither of us spoke again. After applying the medicine to CRN, our relationship remained that of strangers. During breaks, I could even see him sending other girls back to the dormitory. There was a big tree in front of our dormitory. CRN and that girl were standing under the big tree. The girl was very good looking, a senior from the 3rd year of high school. She stood on tiptoe, pouting her lips at CRN. When CRN bent down, he suddenly glanced in my direction. I quickly turned my head away. CRN shifted his gaze, bent down to pinch the girl's face, and then left with a smile. I don't know why, but I always paid a little more attention to CRN. Lying on the dormitory bed, I thought about it and finally came to the conclusion that, I liked his face. Just looking at it was nice. Later, when I happened to see CRN walking with other girls, I would quickly walk to a place where I couldn't see him, or I would walk far behind, not even raising my head. I thought this way I wouldn't offend CRN. The next time CRN got injured, he came to me with the medicine. This time it was his arm. He propped one hand on the desk, raised his injured arm, and winked at me, saying, "Study committee member." As soon as I picked up the bag, I saw the senior from the 3rd year of high school coming. I suddenly stood up from my seat, and my head hit CRN's chin. "Study committee member, if you want me dead, you don't have to hit me with your head. What if I become stupid?" As he spoke, he reached out his hand towards my head. I dodged back, avoiding CRN's hand, seeing the senior getting closer. I quickly bowed to Ciaran and then ran away. Ciaran stayed where he was, his expression a bit gloomy and hard to read. The swimming suits arrived, and the first class in the afternoon was a swimming class. Everyone changed into their swimming suits. I had never worn such revealing clothes before, so I put on a coat over my swimming suit. Wow, holy shit, Rango has long legs. Hearing this voice, I turned my head and looked around. Then the voice sounded again, full of surprise. Fuck, it's actually the study committee member. Only then did I realize they were talking about me. I nervously tugged at my clothes, my eyes met Ciaran's, and I subconsciously looked him up and down. The swimming suit was tight, outlining his well-defined abdominal muscles. He had broad shoulders and a narrow waist, a typical inverted triangle figure, but he looked a bit annoyed. I lowered my head. Indeed, Ciaran didn't like me, and he probably didn't like me looking at him either. When we gathered, the teacher frowned when he saw me wearing glasses and said, "Didn't you get a pair of prescription swimming goggles? How can you swim like this? Don't you have any common sense?" Joyu laughed and said, "Teacher, you're really right. Her dad is lame, and her mom didn't even finish primary school. Their family is so poor that they might not even be able to fill their stomachs. Teacher, how would she know that you need to wear swimming goggles for swimming?" Joey seemed to be explaining for me, but in fact, she revealed my family situation in detail. The teacher looked surprised, then fell silent for a moment and said dryly, "If your myopia isn't too severe, you can take off your glasses." Joey raised her hand again. "Teacher, she's a top student. She reads books every day. How can her myopia not be severe?" At this time, Ciaran impatiently tisked Ed and said, "Are you the only one with a mouth? Aren't you noisy?" Joey's face turned red with embarrassment, but she didn't dare to retort. She just fell silent and lowered her head. The teacher didn't mention it anymore. I took off my glasses when I got into the water. Because of my high myopia, I stayed alone by the side, afraid of bumping into someone. Despite my worries, I still bumped into someone while practicing, because I couldn't open my eyes in the water without glasses. So when I surfaced, the first thing I saw was a set of abdominal muscles. I quickly apologized. "Sorry, are you okay?" After apologizing, I looked up to see who it was. My eyes met a face with a half smile. Study committee member. My eyes widened, and my feet slipped, causing me to sink into the water. At this moment, a hand pulled me up. I gasped for breath. Looking at the blurry figure of Ciaran in front of me, my chest heaving, Ciaran moved closer, carefully examining my face, then smiled and said, "Study committee member, do you have some strange aesthetic quirks?" "What do you mean?" "I mean," Ciaran leaned down and whispered in my ear, "I take back what I said about you not being my type." I was stunned, and my ears quickly turned red until my whole face was burning. I broke free from his grasp and swam to the shore in a panic, putting on my glasses that gave me a sense of security, then let out a long sigh. I scanned the swimming pool, and there was no sign of Ciaran. The blush on my face gradually faded, and my heartbeat returned to normal. "Don't believe it. Ciaran is just teasing you." I was warning my past self, but she couldn't hear me, and I woke up. I looked around the room. It was very simple, with only a computer desk, an e-sports chair, and a computer. My clothes had been changed. Didn't die, huh? I forced a bitter smile and walked out of the room groggily. I found a girl leaning on the sofa, watching TV. When she was happy, she would pick up an apple from the table and take a bite. It seemed this was her home, and maybe she was the one who saved me. I was just about to thank her. She frowned, stood up, and her expression instantly turned bad. She scolded me. "Who are you? Why are you in Ciaran's house?" I was stunned. "What did she say?" She said this was Ciaran's house. Seeing me stunned, she folded her arms and walked up to me. "Hey, I'm asking you a question. Why are you in Ciaran's house and sleeping in his room?" The girl's face looked very ugly, showing a possessive look. I lowered my eyes and said, "I don't know him. He saved me. You're his girlfriend, right? Thank him for me. I'll leave now. You'd better leave quickly." I walked towards the suitcase in the corner. When I went out, I wasn't paying attention and bumped into someone. It was very hard, and it hurt my head. I covered my forehead, looked up to apologize, and when I saw Ciaran's face clearly, my pupils dilated, and I involuntarily took 2 steps back. Ciaran hadn't changed much. The only difference was that he had lost his youthful air and became more mature and charming. He was holding groceries in his hand. His eyes moved to my hand pulling the suitcase, and he sneered, "What, going to jump into the river again?" I looked at Ciaran. This time, I didn't avoid his gaze and said softly, "Ciaran, am I in your way?" Hearing this sentence, Ciaran's expression was stunned for a moment. Coming back to his senses, he asked, "Suji, want to have a meal?" I shook my head. "No, I'm in a hurry." Ciaran lowered his eyes, and his hand holding the groceries tightened. "Can you stop trying to die?" I looked up at Ciaran seriously and said, "You shouldn't have saved me. I just also want to have a home." Ciaran's eyes lit up, then I added, "A home where my parents are. Although my dad is lame and my mom is sick, the family you would never want to encounter is what I dream of day and night." Ciaran fell silent. I walked out, and Ciaran grabbed my arm, saying, "Suji, I'm getting married." I paused, let out a soft sigh. "Really? Then congratulations. Will you come to my wedding?" Ciaran turned to look at me. His eyes were as charming as before. "Is my presence what makes your wedding perfect?" I asked. Ciaran looked at me for a long time. Then his thin lips parted, and he said one word, "Yes." I smiled at him and said in a light-hearted tone, "Then I'll come. I won't leave you with any regrets." "When is it?" "In a month." "Okay." I agreed to Ciaran and rented a house here for a month. In high school, I thought Ciaran liked me too, so I saved money for a long, long time to buy him a watch. But the truth proved that it was just my wishful thinking. It was an embarrassing unrequited love. Now that Ciaran is getting married, I will personally draw a full stop to my teenage unrequited love and this part of my life. The next day, in the middle of the night, Ciaran knocked on my door. When I opened it, a strong smell of alcohol hit me. It was raining, and he was soaked through. Ciaran hugged me tightly, burying his head in my neck. Instantly, I felt a large patch of my neck get wet. Ciaran turned his head and whispered in my ear, "Suji, I've been looking for you for 8 years. You didn't give any hint of your whereabouts. Do you hate me?" Ciaran's tone was a bit aggrieved, and his words were a bit slurred. I turned my head and said, "Ciaran, you're drunk." Ciaran straightened up and took out a watch. I was slightly stunned. This was the watch I threw into the trash can back then. I found it. "Don't throw it away again." I lowered my head and said softly, "It's not a valuable thing. Don't keep it." Ciaran's breathing became slightly heavy. He suddenly pinched my chin, forcing me to raise my head. His eyes were filled with a strong sense of possessiveness. The next moment, his kiss landed heavily, and he said in a hoarse voice, mixed with slurred words, "Suji, I regret it. I shouldn't have been jealous." I widened my eyes. Just as I was about to step back, the hand Ciaran had around my waist tightened, forcefully holding me in place so that I couldn't move back until I was pressed against him. Ciaran's tongue pried open my teeth, probing deeper. His hands held me firmly, not allowing me any room to retreat. Little by little, he made me reek of alcohol, his kiss burning hot. The kiss I had thought about for a long time in high school happened at this moment. I looked at Ciaran expressionlessly, then suddenly smiled and said, "Ciaran, sleep with me. How can a person just take without giving? In high school, you played with me like watching a performing monkey. Even a monkey gets tired. It needs some sweetness to keep performing. What do you think?" Ciaran frowned, reached out and stroked the stray hair by my cheek, and said softly, "Suji, you're not well. Come with me to see a doctor tomorrow." "Okay." Ciaran's tone was extremely gentle. I tilted my head and saw the girl following Ciaran. It was raining, and she was just standing quietly behind Ciaran. I thought she was a bit unfamiliar at that time, but now I remembered. She and Ciaran were from the same world. They grew up together, however. She didn't know me and didn't know about all the girls related to Ciaran. Since the swimming class, Ciaran seemed to have turned on some switch and always liked to tease me when I was doing exercises. Ciaran leaned against the window and snatched the workbook from my hand, teasing, "Study committee member, still studying." I stammered, There's an exam coming up. The person next to us laughed and said, Rango, why do you always tease the study committee member? Look, you've made her nervous. CRN raised his eyebrows, leaned closer to look at my face, and said as he looked, let me take a look. I kept my head down. When playing basketball, CRN refused the water given by other girls and said with a smile, sorry, the study committee member of our class brought me water. How could I bring him water? After hearing this, I ran to buy water for him. Later, during the sports meeting, CRN brought a girl. During that time, CRN didn't even give me a glance. I saw him coaxing that girl. Little princess, where can I find an umbrella for you? Isn't it okay to get a little sun-tanned? The girl was fair-skinned and very pretty. I silently handed over my umbrella. The girl didn't even look at me and said, it's so ugly. I won't use it. Whoever wants it can take it. CRN threw the umbrella back to me and said, all right. If you don't want to use it, then don't. I won't play basketball anymore. Okay, then you won't get sun-tanned, princess. This was the first time I saw CRN coaxing someone else. Suji, CRN called me. I came back to my senses and nodded at him distantly. I'll go see a doctor. I promise I'll be healthy before your wedding, CRN. Don't worry. I won't ruin your wedding. Please rest assured. You can leave now. CRN was already at the door. I just closed the door, separating CRN and the girl. CRN knocked on the door and shouted, Suji. Then I heard the girl's voice, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. But CRN didn't knock on the door again. I took a few pills and lay down on the bed. Suddenly, I had a dream about my parents. During the summer vacation of my second year in high school, our family was harvesting rice. Joyu, in order to embarrass me, called most of the classmates in the class to help with the harvest. My father and mother took out the best food to entertain them. My parents didn't notice the look of disgust in their eyes, but I did. CRN was the first to speak. Uncle, this fish is delicious. Is it wild? My father nodded with a smile. Yes, there are a lot in the river. I still have a few in the tank. You can take them back to eat. CRN ate happily. After that, he went to help with the rice harvesting. He didn't know how to do it, so I taught him. He pinched my face with a smile and said, Suji, you know so many things. Then he started working silently. After a while, the others couldn't keep going and started doing other things. Seeing this, I ran to the grocery store and bought a big bag of popsicles. I took them back and distributed them to everyone. Joyu folded her arms and said, we're helping you with the work. You should at least treat us to something better. How can you be so shameless to take out such cheap popsicles? I paused and said, these are good for quenching thirst. Throughout the process, CRN did the most work. My father kept praising him. One by one, the others left, and only CRN worked until it was dark. When it was dark, the road became difficult to walk on. My father said, young man, stay for the night. I'll ask Xiaoji to make a bed for you. My room was on the second floor. CRN made a makeshift bed on the balcony of the second floor. The house wasn't soundproof, and I could hear CRN tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. So I lit a mosquito-repellent incense and took it to him. As soon as I walked up to him, he opened his eyes and said with a smile, what? Does the study committee member want to do something to me while I'm asleep? I put down the mosquito-repellent incense, squatted down, and asked softly, does your body hurt? CRN was used to a pampered life. When had he ever done farm work? Even if he didn't say anything, I knew his body must be hurting. In the dark, I couldn't see CRN's expression clearly. He was silent for a while, then said in a hoarse voice, it does hurt. I put my hand on his arm. I'll give you a massage. It'll feel better when the muscles are loosened up. I silently massaged CRN's arm. I felt his body temperature getting higher and higher, so I asked, are you hot? He coughed lightly twice and said, no, not hot. The study committee member really knows how to massage. I feel much better. After a moment of silence, I thanked him. CRN, thank you for today. If it weren't for you, my parents and I would have to harvest for many more days. Suddenly, CRN put one hand on the back of my head and lowered me a little. All I could see clearly were his eyes, which were burning with passion. He asked, "Can I kiss you?" I was stunned, but I nodded. After I nodded, it was Ciaran's turn to be stunned. He let go of his hand and said, "I'm just kidding." I didn't stop my massage and just replied with an mm. When the third year of high school started, Ciaran became a bit cold towards me. At that time, I was already saving money. I thought I could repay Ciaran for his help. Because I had good grades, many people often came to me to ask questions. One of them was Yujia. He could come to me 7 or 8 times a day. When Ciaran passed by, he said with a sneer, "Yujia, do you treat the study committee member as a free teacher?" Then he bent down and looked at me. "Suji, can you get rich this way?" His tone was somewhat sarcastic. I frowned, not knowing what I had done to offend him, but I didn't say anything. It wasn't until I gave the watch I had saved for a long time to Ciaran. I left school early that day and heard what Ciaran said. Only then did I understand that Ciaran had never really respected me. He treated me like a kitten or a puppy. When he was happy, he would play with me. When he was unhappy, he would leave me alone. There was no real affection at all. After getting up, I went to the hospital. The doctor asked me, "What's the situation?" I said, "I was previously diagnosed with moderate depression." The doctor let out a long sigh and said, "Moderate, still controllable. Let's do another examination." I nodded and took the examination form, but halfway through, I suddenly changed my mind, so I left. As soon as I walked out of the hospital, I met Ciaran waiting at the hospital entrance. He walked towards me and asked, "Did you have the examination? What kind of medicine did the doctor prescribe?" I was a bit annoyed, but still smiled and lied. "I did everything. The doctor said I'm in a good state." Ciaran frowned. "Suji, you know, your eyes are especially focused when you lie." I put away my smile and looked up at him, asking, "Ciaran, do you like me? Does your girlfriend know you're so concerned about me?" I wasn't afraid that Ciaran would mock me for asking this question, but what Ciaran said was something I never expected. He took out a cigarette, lit it, took a puff, and said with a smile, "Yeah, I like you." Ciaran's words exploded in my ears. I was only shocked for a second, then I smiled and said, "I don't like you, Ciaran. I know. I'm chasing you." Ciaran extinguished the cigarette in his hand. "Then die with me, Ciaran." I stood there waiting for Ciaran's answer. He looked at me for a long time, so long that I lost patience. Just as I turned my head, I heard Ciaran's voice from behind. He said, "Okay." Then, he took my hand and asked, "How do you want to die? By jumping into the river, or jumping off a building?" I fell silent. "You're going to get married, Ciaran." But Ciaran seemed determined. He sneered. "The marriage was originally a lie to keep you. What marriage am I going to have? And who am I going to marry? What about that girl?" "You mean Jiangshui?" Ciaran asked. I nodded. "So that girl's name was Jiangshui." Ciaran rubbed his temples. "She's my brother's girlfriend. It wouldn't be good for me to steal her, right? That girl was Ciaran's brother's girlfriend, but you clearly treated her." I didn't finish my sentence. Ciaran smiled. "Of course I have to treat her well, otherwise, my brother will really beat me up. Since we're talking about it, let's just say it all. She came to me last night to persuade me, and back then, I said those things because I was jealous. The gift you gave me, it was very nice." I felt a bit dazed, as if I saw the high school Ciaran smiling at me and saying, "Study committee member, this watch is really nice." After everything was out in the open, the barrier in my heart should have been broken, but I still felt very depressed. I pushed Ciaran away and said seriously, "But the Suji now is not the Suji back then. You can leave now." Ciaran didn't leave. Instead, he followed me closely, not leaving me for a second. I was a bit impatient. "You're going to delay me from finding a boyfriend like this." I just wanted Ciaran to leave me alone. As for having a boyfriend, it was just something I made up. But Ciaran still stubbornly followed me. "Suji, wouldn't it be good if I searched you together with him?" My face turned a bit red. Then I sneered. "Do you still have abdominal muscles? What can you use to compete with others? Your thick skin." Ciaran lifted his clothes, grabbed my hand, and forcefully made it slide up and down on his abdomen, saying in a hoarse voice, "Do I have them? Touch more." I tried to pull my hand back, but CRN didn't allow it. He even pulled my hand lower. He smiled at me, leaned close to my ear, and said, "I've wanted to do this since the first time we had swimming class." CRN became increasingly shameless. He accompanied me every day, taking me to many out of the way places. But they all had one thing in common: they were all places for worship. "When did you start believing in these things? And you believe in so many different things." He grinned and said, "Yeah, I hope they can all bless you." I was stunned. CRN pestered me like this for a year, and I finally gave in. We quickly got married. CRN's parents didn't care about it at all. CRN smiled and said to me, "I'm used to it, from childhood to adulthood. Neither my brother nor I have been cared for by them. They just give us some money and food." Only then did I know that CRN's parents had a very bad relationship. CRN's father had a mistress outside, and his mother also had her own lover. Their marriage was already in name only. If it weren't for the company, they would have divorced long ago. Fortunately, CRN still had his brother. Later, I spent every day happily with CRN. I laughed a lot. But I knew my illness actually hadn't gotten better. I secretly went for an examination. The doctor said it was severe depression and had been like this for some time. I had severe somatization symptoms, but I hid it from CRN until one day I unconsciously took a large amount of sleeping pills. When I woke up, CRN was by my bedside with red-rimmed eyes. He rubbed his face against my hand. "Suji, you're not allowed to die." When CRN went out to buy me food, Jiangshui came. She looked at me, clenched her fists, and sneered. "Suji, do you know that CRN's brother died when he was in his senior year of high school? Even if you feel sorry for CRN, please don't die." "Okay, he never said that," I said softly. Jiangshui turned her head. "He was thinking about you. He didn't want you to pity him. He wanted to cure you. But who will cure him? He's always so stupid." At this moment, there was love in Jiangshui's eyes. Jiangshui had fallen in love with CRN. I looked at her. "You will cure him, right?" Jiangshui's expression became serious. She looked into my eyes earnestly and said, "If I could, in these 8 years, you wouldn't have been in the picture at all. He only sees me as his sister-in-law. Suji, he can't live without you." After hearing Jiangshui's words, I tried my best to receive treatment. At the beginning, the effect wasn't obvious. CRN knew, but he didn't say anything. Late at night, after testing whether I was asleep, CRN kissed my forehead and said, "All saved bit by bit from the meal money." I closed my eyes, my eyelashes fluttering nervously. CRN hugged me, stroking my back again and again to comfort me. That night, CRN and I seemed to have made a decision. Since it was really painful, we would die together. When everything was ready, I suddenly started vomiting violently. After going to the hospital for an examination, the report showed that I was pregnant. The fetus was already 4 weeks old. I was stunned, and so was CRN. At this moment, the barrier in my heart seemed to suddenly break. I turned my head and smiled at CRN. Then, we held hands and went home in the sunset. CRN excitedly touched my belly and then said, "Shall we go fishing and eat fish, Suji?" I seemed to see my father smiling and talking, and my mother listening gently. I nodded and said softly, "Okay."